So I'm very deliberate in how I want to live life. Seeking adventure, not doing things that don't excite me. What I do now with the business called Rough as Guts is we're a premium tour provider for tag-along tours. So
Mhm.
it's a guided tour, but it's self-drive. They either come in their own vehicles, or if they're international, they rent their own vehicles, and we take them into some of the most remote parts of Western Australia, which just happen to be some of the most remote parts of the world.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus on Air. I am again your host, Mike Hoffman, and today I am joined by Toby Richardson. Toby, how you doing today?
I'm very well. I'm a little cold here in Denver compared to back home, but I'm doing very well.
Yeah, you're far from back home because back home is Australia, correct?
Yes, Western Australia, and when I left, it was about 115 every day, and got here in the middle of the cold snap, so it wasn't so much a culture shock, so much as a weather shock.
Yeah, and you're wearing short sleeves too, so even crazier, living on the edge. But
Yeah.
reading about you, that's kind of what you do. You're an adventure-obsessed pilot, a writer, a stand-up comedian, independent filmmaker. Your life is built around movement, risk, and curiosity. And as one of the many things you do, you operate an off-road tour business through some of the most remote regions of the outback. Sounds like a pretty fun life.
Yeah, it's been quite good so far. So what I do now with the business called Rough as Guts is we're a premium tour provider for tag-along tours. So
Mhm.
it's a guided tour, but it's self-drive. They either come in their own vehicles, or if they're international, they rent their own vehicles, and we take them into some of the most remote parts of Western Australia, which just happen to be some of the most remote parts of the world.
What got you into this? I mean, because obviously, those off-road things are pretty cool, but like, where do I even start with you? Because there's so many different areas of life, and they're so distinct from each other. So obviously, I'm going to guess all of these things are basically just built around your passion for them. But kind of talk about how you got to where you are today in life.
Sure. So I'm very deliberate in how I want to live life. Seeking adventure, not doing things that don't excite me. But aside from that, a lot of things are accidental. So I got my commercial pilot's license in, I think that was January 2020, right before the world went into lockdown. So we went from
Mhm.
a great shortage of pilots to probably the biggest oversupply in modern history.
Yeah.
And a few things led to another. I ended up starting a commercial cleaning business, industrial cleaning, and I did that for a few years because that was one of the only things I could do at the time in terms of what industries had been shut down, what was still available.
Mhm.
But I really didn't enjoy it. So after about 2.5 years, I decided I was going to go back to doing something I enjoy.
So talk about it. So now that the world's back open and stuff, when you say you're adventure obsessed pilot, so what kind of flying are you doing now?
So I'm not doing a whole lot of flying at the moment, just because it's very expensive to do it for yourself, and I'm not working for anyone.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to get into a bit of backcountry flying. I want to do a bit of flying over here, where there's a lot more options for remote stuff if you're doing it on your own. General aviation is very expensive in Australia. It's not as expensive in the US. So I'm looking at getting a conversion for a private license over here. I've got a few friends that went on to do remote medevac flying in northern Canada and Alaska, and that's what's kind of entrancing me at the moment. I'd like to do that, but that's more of a side project these days compared to what I'm doing tourism wise in the business.
To talk about that. So what are you kind of doing in the business right now with the tourism?
Sure, we're expanding internationally, not in terms of what we offer, but in terms of trying to get more international clients. So part of the reason I'm over here at the moment is to talk to some travel agents, and then in a few weeks I'm going to Berlin. It's the world's biggest B2B tourism trade show. So trying to get a few more agents, resellers, wholesalers, that kind of thing. Trying to launch a few more premium products. And I'm right at the point where if I might overexpand and ruin the kind of lifestyle aspect that I've created for myself. So I'm trying to ride that line and not overexpand.
Yeah. So when you talk about, I think this is kind of cool. So going back to what you're doing in the Outback, these guided tours. So, kind of talk about what they are. I mean, I know you said they kind of I guess to go into the Outback is obviously when someone who's never been there thinks about the Outback. I think we all have our different opinion on it. So kind of talk about what people are seeing in these really remote regions of the Outback.
Sure. So our shortest tour is 8 days,
Uh,
and that starts approximately 2 day drive from Perth. So you have to get yourself to Perth, which from here is about 30 hours of travel, and then you have to get in the car, drive another 2 days, and from there we go 8 days further remote, so out into the Western Desert region of Western Australia, to the edge of the Great Sandy Desert, and sometimes we'll go out there for 8 days and we'll see one other person on the trip. So there's a lot of rivers, spring-fed gorges, canyons, that kind of stuff. And one is in the Western Desert region. One we do in the tropics, and there you'll see waterfalls, crocodiles, just a lot of the. I guess we're trying to do something that's a bit cliched in terms of its appeal. You go out there and it's a bit Crocodile Dundee-esque.
It's and because when you hear about Australia, you think about the Australia Zoo and you think about wildlife. I mean, it's kind of like, I think for most people who picture Australia, obviously it's a lot of Australia, because it's huge, is very commercialized, and obviously just like big cities here, businesses and things like that. But I think most people envision the entire area of Australia just to be wildlife.
Yeah, I mean, I think it possibly gets overinterpreted in terms of
Yeah.
the dangerous wildlife. I mean, we only have 9 of the 12 most venomous snakes in the world, so it's really not that much as far as I'm concerned. But what happens with the Australian population? I think it's something more than 90% lives within an hour of the coast. So you've got this giant country. Australia's larger than the lower 48 states. If you look at the world map, it doesn't show that, because they're trying to put a globe onto a rectangle, and it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So what happens is you have, I think there are about 24 million people in Australia at the moment, and so Western Australia is almost 4 times the size of Texas, and we have 1/10 of the population. So there's places there that are quite literally 40 times as remote as some of the most remote places you'll find in the US, because we don't have the population in the centre, and there's no big network of interstates. We have a highway that goes all the way around and then one up the middle. So if you're anywhere outside of that, you can be driving for days and days on these little dirt tracks without coming across anything. Every now and then you'll find a very remote Aboriginal community, and that's where we get fuel on some of our trips. And it's a kind of remoteness that I can't think that you would get in any other developed country.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, in the US, and I've toured a significant part of it, you're never driving anywhere where you're just like on a dirt road for hours. I mean, obviously, we all get off the main roads at times, but you're never for that long, like hours and hours and hours on end. It's actually shocking to hear that the population is so much lower per capita, kind of like, to your example, as to like what Texas is.
Yeah, so if you compare it to the size of the US, we've got, my mental maths isn't great. Is that less than 1/10 of the population? Is it about
Okay.
300 million here? Yeah, so about a
Yeah.
tenth of the population in the same size.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And you look at all the, I would definitely wouldn't mind getting rid of 90% of the population here. I think life would be a lot more enjoyable. So you're doing that, and then you also talk about being a stand-up comedian, which totally doesn't play into this lifestyle at all. So how did that come about?
I was living in Thailand for a while, and when I was working as a writer, so doing the whole remote work thing pre-COVID, and one of my friends, the same guy that I met him at a hostel, and he got me into freelance writing, and that's how I was able to live in Thailand and travel cheaply. And it's surprising, Bangkok has a reasonable English-speaking comedy scene,
Mhm.
and he encouraged me to go to a few open mics, and it kind of just took off from there.
So when you're going to an open mic, I mean, I assume you're preparing for that. I mean, you're kind of writing material. So what is your material based on? Like, do you talk about like your adventures, or are you talking about a totally different aspect of life?
Yeah, just whatever pops into my mind. So some of it will be, current affairs. I try not to be observational or topical. There's people that can do that a lot better better than I can. A lot of the Australian sense of humour, which comes from the English heritage, is looking for a lot of word association. So we probably do a few more play on words, pun related jokes and that than what would fly with an audience in the US. But when I'm international, I try and just lean into the Australian thing. You can get away with a bit more when you have an accent that's interesting. So I
Yeah.
lay it on a bit thicker and do the old "that's not a knife" kind of thing.
Yeah, well, you have the Australian credibility with me right now, because you're right. You sound like a born and raised Australian.
Yes.
So, with all these things you're doing, I know you talk about growing the business and stuff like that. How would you like to see the next chapter of your business, evolve? I know you're going to these, but you mentioned growing it, making it more international. But if you can kind of write the next 5 or 10 years professionally, how would you like to see that playing out?
I'd like to. We have a few luxury tours that we want to offer. We think we can be one of the first companies in the world that can do. Our concept is a roving safari lodge. So if you can imagine an African style safari lodge, or possibly something you'd maybe see in Mongolia on the edge of the Gobi Desert, we think we can have something like that that moves. And so we'll have a adventure during the day, but luxury at night option for travelers that want to go to places that you can't do that currently.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will help us with some revenue goals, because that will be chasing the affluent markets. And then I want to do a few outbound options as well. So we have these existing customers and a contacts list in Australia, and I want to bring some of our customers overseas. So we're looking at doing one in Indonesia, working with some partners there, going to try and drive up a volcano, possibly
Excuse
South
me, what?
America as well.
You can try and drive off a volcano?
But yeah, just drive up one. Apparently there's a active volcano with a couple of little tracks going up the side. So anybody that wants to see a volcano from a car, we're going to try and do it.
Okay. Is that the safest thing in the world?
No, probably not. But it's like I'm taking people into areas of Australia where anybody that does it on their own, I respect that they do it, but it's not something we typically recommend. So a big part of our business is managing risk and making things that are maybe not the safest in the world a little bit safer. But ultimately, I treat everyone like adults. They can take on their own risks. And Australia's not as litigious as the US, so I'm not. As long as I don't do anything stupid, I'm not worried about getting sued every other month.
Right. You're not being negligent. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas the U.S., that would probably be more of a concern. So we talk about some of the things you've done, and you like a no regret kind of policy in life. What are some of what I would call the more adventurous things you've done?
In 2019, my dad and we went to Peru to follow the Dakar Rally. It was the last time it was in South America, and so we hired some motorcycles in the south of Peru. We rode up north to Lima, and then we followed the rally south, and then we went inland and up through the Andes Mountains and all that. Most of that was, I wouldn't consider it that kind of crazy, except we were just finding places to camp in the Atacama Desert, and we also didn't really have a plan on how to get back. That's just as I was finishing my studies, so
Yeah.
I didn't really have a lot of money. So I sold my motorbike, and I rang my dad and I said, I bought us tickets to Peru. I don't know how we're getting back, but we're going to have to make some money to hire some bikes. And that was our first attempt at a film. And the adventure was great, but the film was terrible. We are not skilled filmmakers in the technical sense, and ever since then we've worked with other people that do the camera work and work with us to get the story and the shots. That's where we learned that we don't really have those technical skills, but that was a great starting point to get into the adventure film side of things. And we ended up at Lima Airport without a flight back, getting my mum to sell my dad's motorbike so we could, because the trip was a bit more expensive than we thought it would be.
Yeah.
And we had to sell his motorbike and buy some tickets home, but it was worth it.
So some of these films you're talking about, you have a YouTube channel, correct?
Yes, we did one about 2 years ago was the latest one we did ourselves, and about 2 years before that we did a film with a well-known filmmaker in the adventure motorcycle scenes, Adam Reeman. We did a film with him that's all through. It's the Pilbara region. It's where I take people on these tours, and so that was probably the best one we've done so far. He's a very skilled filmmaker, and then he's also got an established audience. So that one's made it a lot further than any of the ones we've done ourselves. But we're still working on it. When we've done these trips, it's a single focus. We're not in contact. These days you can have Starlink, but we don't have the phones on. It's just, I can't think of anything else I've done in my life where we're there to do one thing and it's all consuming and it takes up every part of your conscious focus. And
Yeah.
you come away from that so refreshed. It's like a meditation retreat almost, because there's no distractions and you're out there doing what you want and you're so focused on it that the first one we made ourselves, I went, even if we never make money from this, it's something that we have to keep doing just because it's all consuming.
So, from a personal perspective, what are the 2 or 3 things that you haven't done that are kind of on your bucket list from an adventure standpoint that you would love to do?
I'd love to ride across the US on Harleys. My grandfather started the Harley Club of Great Britain, and that was the biggest in the world outside of the US. I believe Harley actually sent representatives over. This must have been in the mid 50s, I think. And so there's a bit of that heritage that we want to live out. And yeah, but that one is more, yeah, just for personal reasons. It'd be
Yeah.
road based, so it wouldn't be that adventurous. And then
Yeah,
yeah, I want to do all of.
Our head IT guy here does that every year.
Oh, okay,
He leaves Jersey, and I think they end up in South Dakota. I think that's where there's a big convention out there.
okay,
And every summer he's gone for about 2 weeks. And him and his, Harley, his crew that he's friends with up here, they drive all the way across country and they hang out there for several days and back they come.
yeah, magic. I'd like to ride around the world on a motorbike. I've met a few people on my travels that have done that. I probably should have done that before I got married. It would have
Yeah.
been a bit easier time commitment wise. It's
Mhm.
a 3 to 6 month endeavor. I at least want to do all of South America, north to south or south to north.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Anything else besides that?
Oh, there's so many things I can't even can't even pick them. I have a written list, which I think is key. I've written hundreds of things down, and there's no way I'll ever get them all done before I die. But
Yeah.
I'll give it a
So
red
I'm
hot
sure you've
crack.
skydived. I'm sure you've bungee jumped and all those kind of things.
There's nowhere to bungee jump in
Oh,
Australia as far as I'm aware. I haven't gone to New Zealand yet. As soon as I go to New Zealand, I'll bungee jump. Yeah, and I have a few friends that are skydive pilots, and there's a bit of a thing in the pilot scene. They go, "Why would you jump out of a perfectly good plane?" And I think, well, why wouldn't you?
yeah. Well, I kind of take the side of why would you? Yeah. But my daughter on her 18th birthday, that was what she wanted to do, and she jumped out of a plane. So that was her
Amazing.
18th birthday present. Yeah. And yeah, she loved it. She said she'd never do it again.
Okay.
But she loved the experience. What makes it cool is they have a photographer jump out with you, kind of like you talked about it before. So they're getting basically shots of you all the way down, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
Yes, she's got like
that's
hundreds of images from the 3 or 4 minutes that she's in the air.
that's a great way to spend an 18th birthday. In Australia, when you turn 18, that's when you can go to the bar.
Yeah,
There's the drinking age. So most 18ths are, yeah, just going out and indulging in Australia's unhealthy drinking culture.
yeah.
But it's a rite of passage.
Oh, listen, everyone does it. Everyone does it. So I know when all the college kids over here go overseas, one of the things they love most about it is the drinking age there is 18 in most places versus 21 here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I had my
Yes, I know.
21st birthday in a city in China called Yantai, and that was the same thing. Taking Australia's drinking culture over to China. That was a wild night.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. So who are you writing independently? Or are you writing, like you said, you write about adventures? You were doing it before. Is that just something you do for enjoyment, or where are you getting these things published?
I was writing for a few different magazines, mainly some adventure motorcycle
Hmm.
ones. I wrote for a couple of US magazines. I can't remember what they're called at the moment, but it was quite ad hoc. But what I was
Yeah.
doing when I was living in Thailand was writing for marketing companies back in the kind of
Uh-huh.
glory days of SEO. So writing a lot of just blog articles and that kind of stuff. That paid the bills, and then writing about the trips we did was more of a hobby, and then it ended up offsetting the cost of some of the trips. So that was just a nice little bonus. But that was a means to an end, so I could live in Asia and travel around. But I found that I enjoyed writing, so I still do it mainly just for the business blog
Yeah.
nowadays.
So you've traveled the world basically. So, if you had to live somewhere, if you had to say to yourself, all right, no more traveling, I got to set somewhere, and it's not Australia. Where's the one place in the world that you would want to make home?
That is a really tough one because I struggle to think of any situation where I would say that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed living in Thailand.
Mhm.
I don't think I would want to age there and be just another expat kind of doing the drinking scene and
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun when I was younger. Business wise, I think there's probably no no place better than starting a business in the States here.
Hmm.
Um, I had a good time when I was living in London for a while and working in a bar, but I can't do the winters. So
Yeah.
yeah, that
Well,
is
for someone who can't do the winters, you're in the wrong spot right now.
yes, I certainly am. But it's been very exciting to see it, and I was in Wisconsin last week, and that's when it hit -40,
Yeah.
and they were saying you can't go outside, you'll get frostbite in 10 minutes, and I didn't
Yeah.
even know that was a thing outside of the Arctic Circle. So it's
Oh,
been
well,
very
it's
fascinating.
been, I mean, this year has been just uncharacteristically cold. I mean, I'm on the East Coast, and we're in the single digits for several days in a row, and that's not common.
Yeah, so I'd say probably all things considered, economically, business-wise, and all that, you're probably somewhere in the southern end of the states if Australia
Yeah.
wasn't an option.
Yeah. Nice. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time. Your YouTube channel is actually called Toby Richardson. Are you on other social media platforms for people to follow you?
YouTube's probably the best place. I'm on Instagram, but I'm a bit of a technophobe luddite.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at the social media thing. I want to get to the point where the videos will stand on their own, and
Sure.
if I don't promote them, then maybe they don't do as well. But yeah, I don't want to be trying to guess what people want and trying to tweak the algorithms and do all that.
Yeah.
I just want it all as a standalone product. If it does all right, it'll do all right.
All right. Well, stay warm. Hope you enjoy the next few days in the U.S. before you travel on, and I wish you nothing but continued success.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.